Okay, everybody, thank you for joining this talk, which is entitled Someday We Shall Talk. So for a long time, I've been preoccupied with the thought of how does anyone even get through to another? And in this current examination entitled Someday We Shall Talk, I would like to examine what comes before language. So before even the attempt to communicate, what is happening before that? And towards that, I have a few questions. And the first one I want to put forth is, who do you see when you look into the mirror? And I can give a slight background on why this question. The question is because to communicate, first of all, where is it coming from? Who is communicating?
Yeah, so communication is coming from our idea of the self. So who are we, right? So that's what you're pointing towards.
Yes.
Can you just repeat that question again, Satya?
Yeah, it's who do you see when you look into the mirror? And the reason for this question is, what comes before language? Who is the one who is speaking?
Yeah.
Who is this that you see in the mirror?
I think, hello?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you, Kritika.
Yeah, I think before you feel the need to communicate, you sort of introspect. And I understand this question more as I look into the mirror and feel either the need to communicate or to shut up or introspect. So when you look into the mirror, depending on what state you're in and what you're feeling, I think you see different things.
That makes sense to me, yeah. So that means there's a different, there's a component of how a person is feeling at a given point that influences what they see in the mirror and their self-image.
Yeah, I strongly believe so. Because I have days when you look into the mirror and you feel good about what you see, or it is the same that your heart and your mind think what it's seeing. But there are other days where you know from a logical side you're looking the same, but your heart is telling you you're not feeling so good, or you don't perceive yourself as being the being that you want to be.
Right, that makes sense. Now,
but is the being that you want to be only singular?
That also again depends on the day and the circumstance, I guess. So when you're feeling confident, then it's a singular question, and when you're not feeling so confident, then it becomes, am I being seen as the person I want to be seen in a particular context, like say within the family, within your peer group, or whatever circumstance you're in at that point.
And to add to complexity over there, we can also choose to see certain people in the mirror. So if I'm not feeling confident on that particular day, I can choose to look at the mirror and give myself a pep talk and look at a winner in that mirror, as one of those cheesy movies with, what's his name, Kevin Spacey. So,
yeah, we can choose to
what did you
be
say,
somebody
Satya,
else.
that you can also see somebody else, you said?
Yes, you look at the mirror and you can lie to yourself to a certain extent. So if I'm not
with questions of the self, I remain stuck at the question that irrespective of who you want to be and who you think you are and all of that, irrespective of all of that, aren't you something or someone before all of that? So
yes,
in the sense,
certainly you are something before that.
Yeah.
But the point is, can you really see that? I mean, are you really equipped enough to see who that is? Or do you even want to see it? Or is it even useful to you? Because if you're so honest with yourself, does it even help you to communicate well?
Yeah, so self-knowledge is we can only consider it a privilege, right? I mean,
yes, I think so.
So it's not even a possible thing, but it's if if it's there, it's great.
Right. But would it be useful? Well, okay, it's a privilege. I can see that. Yeah. But the question is, do we want to move towards gaining that privilege? Is it useful or is it not? If you for effective communication, do you even need that information?
Satya, before that, retrenching one step,
Uh-huh.
it also plays a role what you use as the mirror to see yourself.
Precisely. Well said. Yeah.
So I think that plays a very big role into where we were before and where we're heading after,
Yeah.
depending on what is the medium that's playing the role of a mirror.
That's a good point. Like, what is the mirror itself? Yeah, that makes sense. Because the mirror could be a
Yeah,
method.
that's a very useful question.
Yeah.
The mirror could be maybe you're asking yourself,
Yeah.
maybe a classical mirror, this reflective surface, or you're asking somebody you're confiding in, where you're opening up and you're using them as a mirror.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Now that's an interesting point, but I I feel like if that I want to keep that aside, the other person as a mirror, because that's a layer of complexity. And if in the subsequent questions, I'm going into that where two people are there in the room, but then you remove the other person and there's only one in that situation, then there is a mirror of some kind. And that's
What
So,
about your own past? What do we do with memory? Can memory be a mirror?
that's true. Yeah, because it is a reflection of who you were or who you are or who you could be.
Yeah.
yeah, your actions are the best reflection of who you appear to be. I mean, your image of yourself might be of someone else, but when you do something, you really appear to be someone else, and that has actually I mean, it seems to me that action will somehow be of a greater priority than idea.
Not necessarily though, right? Because action might actually add to the complexity when when you introspect. You are sitting quietly, you are in stillness, you are examining yourself, but when you act, you're giving some new uh, variables into the system. You're giving some new you're adding throwing some new stones and they're causing some new ripples.
But um, one could be mimicking somebody else. So where is your identity? So act doesn't necessarily help, I would think, define one's individuality or image as such.
You're saying that the act does not define the self
Yeah,
itself.
yeah, yes, not necessarily and not all the time, because one could be acting like somebody else, or you know.
But what if I am a psychopath and that is who I am, that I have to act like somebody else?
No, I mean psychopaths. I don't know if they'd want to act like somebody else because it's not. They can't probably comprehend or differentiate between. There are probably multiple personalities, but I don't know if how much of that they're in control of.
But that
Precisely. They're
isn't
not
that
in control.
to do with degrees also. See, this thing of what we know as ourselves and what might be somebody else or somebody these other selves within ourselves also. It can only be to different degrees. So when we term someone a psychopath, then the degree of that difference is uh, far more impactful on the overall persona and far more visible. Maybe
Right.
it's not so visible with many of us, but with some people it's more visible. But I don't know, whether that categorization uh, is. I don't know if they use it as a mirror. I don't know what happens.
So you're saying the question that I'm hearing is if does labeling cause a certain type of mirror to happen?
Perhaps.
Yeah,
Or the fear of labeling.
right.
I mean, maybe we all have the freedom to become psychopaths, but social pressure is stopping us, and for some, it's not. And I think that there's value in that.
Right. So there is a exactly. So there is a sort of a regulating force, a sort of attenuating mechanism that is telling you, that is forming your self-image and what you see
Yes.
in the mirror. Yeah, that makes sense.
And
No, but for something that has to happen, I mean, for
yeah,
example, I mean, psychosis is best defined as events that cannot be controlled, right? Events in the psyche that cannot be controlled.
yeah.
Okay.
So if they cannot be controlled, then how will labeling or all of these things, how will they limit it?
It depends again on the individual, though. I mean, if you are prone to accepting external influences as a regulatory mechanism, then it might have an impact on how you are defining and what you see in the mirror.
Yeah, I think this
See,
whole
yeah,
labeling aspect also kind of makes you see things in a certain way for the fear of not falling into the labeled categories.
Right.
right, right.
On a blind spot to certain things that you're sort of seeing, but you don't want to accept and really, see it the way it is.
Right. You don't want to see it because if you see it really the way it is, maybe your communication and your interactions will be deeply affected.
Hmm.
Your everyday will be so deeply impacted that you're afraid of losing what you have.
I think we are trying very hard to not be generalized, and we're constantly trying to reinvent and define ourselves as
Hmm.
different from the other. So and it's a fallacy to look at each of us and reflect upon ourselves as individuals and not give credit to the various influences that others have had,
Certainly,
because
certainly. No, no, I'm not saying that we will not give. Absolutely. I mean, we are a product of where we are amongst all this whole network,
many things.
whatever it is. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. We are definitely a product. But then when we look at ourselves, I mean, do we even need to look at ourselves? Is sometimes I think about, like, when for effective communication, do you even need to look at yourself? Do you even need to know the true self?
But what is
No,
this
so
true self that we keep referring to is something that I fail to understand.
And I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. And I
I
feel like
mean,
that. Mhm. Go ahead,
it's
Prayas.
like before you open your mouth, let's say before you speak, and before you are aware of what your voice sounds like, before that you could have some ideas in your head about what your voice might sound like, but after you hear your voice, you
Yeah.
won't have any I don't know how one can have any delusions about that voice being like something else.
But
No,
your
You
but
voice
then,
hear
also
it.
changes. I mean, you guys should know, but I mean, the voice you had when you were a child is different from the voice you have as an adult.
and the voice you have when you speak to one person as opposed to another.
Exactly.
Or the voice in which you speak in a certain language. Like I find a big difference when I speak German or when I speak English or Hindi. I find I sound very different.
Right. And even the way your thoughts are formed and the way those thoughts are coming, at least say it happens for me where I think in different ways if I'm speaking different languages.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that logic flow goes in a different way.
Right. Right. And does that change who I am? I don't know. Maybe it does. Like Chetan says, that's the feedback that's going in and it's shaping me.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. So does that even change your self-image? I mean, does that even affect your self-image in any way?
Personally, if I speak Portuguese, I feel more poetic. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel, wow, like I'm this other being. Or even Hindi, I feel more at home, perhaps. Like, if I'm speaking in Hindi. If I'm speaking in English, it feels like something else.
It's yeah, true. It doesn't seem casual, or it seems too official and uptight for me.
For you personally,
English,
yeah. Yeah,
personally, yeah.
yeah. So, what I'm
I don't
hearing,
feel any difference when I switch languages. In fact, languages of all kinds, as far as I'm speaking, make me feel uncomfortable.
interesting point. Mm. So it's like there's a disconnect between what you want to say and what you're saying.
Yeah, I just always feel this sense of loss that I'm not
That's
quite, you know, performing to my optimal potential.
I understand. Yeah, it's there's always that loss, as Prayas also mentioned in the earlier talk. There is
Yeah,
always that. Yeah, yeah.
it may be
Well,
in terms of sound, it may be in terms of enunciation, even then finally even in terms of what is said, content.
yeah, yeah. I feel like so when we look into the mirror, there are different people there, depending on so many things. I think let's move on to the next question from here and bring the other into the picture, which is the question is, what do you see when you see the other? What do you see when you see the other?
Yourself.
Yeah, I was going to say parts of yourself.
Right,
Okay, that's fair.
right. You also see what you want to see. Like I
That's
might,
Or you're
possible.
yeah,
also what you're capable of seeing. So
right. Very much, yeah. Yeah, if I'm a big chiropractor and there's a person going with a certain type of a limp, then I can see that this is the problem in their bone. But they themselves won't know that.
Hmm.
Or it's also with previous associations, I guess. You know, what we've associated with what we've seen in life, we try to replay that. So many a times we overplay rather than analyze it correctly, I suppose.
So, Kritika, I'm sorry I missed that. You talked about association.
Yeah. Um, so I think it's also like what we see is the association we make. Like if I saw a person, say, holding his head walking, so I would immediately assume that he has a headache.
Right,
Because that's what I've been tuned to analyze in that situation. But it
right.
could be that the sun is shining in his face and so he's holding his head or something else. But
Yeah.
that's not going to be what I would think as soon as I see someone holding their head.
Exactly right. And this is one of my pet peeves with the whole body language management speak that goes on. Like if a person is having a closed body language, then that person is not trustworthy. There are some nonsense statements like this. And my point is, I'm cold all the time. And if they put the AC full blast and I have to sit like this, does that make me appear as untrustworthy? That's, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah, or
it's
people who give you a light handshake cannot be trusted. So you don't always need that bone crunching handshake.
yeah,
You
yeah,
feel
exactly.
confident.
Yeah, I mean that one really upsets me, and I just refuse to shake anyone's hand. Give it a tight. It's like I
I
won't give
actually
it.
stopped wearing rings. That's why, because it would just hurt so badly when someone will shake your hand. And I was just like, I'm not wearing any rings. It's like you all crushed.
Yes, a punishment.
And there was another nonsense where, when you go to an interview, hold a hot beverage in your hand and then shake the hand of the interviewer, then you make a favorable impression. But it's
Good Lord.
oh,
but this is
thank you
not
for the
nonsense. No, no, this is the sad part is this is not nonsense because there's actually studies which have been done, and people who have a cold, they tend to shut down or something versus if you have a warmth in your touch, then I should dig up the study. But anyway, there are
Oh.
some things which are based on certain biological truths, but there are others which are social constructs. Um, but
So
then
when
I
coming,
mean,
we
I
talk of biological
think
truths,
all of
then
these kind of
sorry, Prayas, Malvika, you
Prayas,
were
go
saying?
on. Yeah, I was thinking of what when you said certain things are biological truths, then we're looking at the non-structured realm of communication.
Yeah,
That is more instinctive. That's what animals and plants and things like that have.
yeah,
Um, because even when it comes, I think as a species, or maybe because our brain functions in a certain way, we are we are built to think of all these matters of ourself, of who we are. I don't know that this idea of self-awareness is is already there with animals, which is why they defend themselves, but they don't take it further to, I don't know, they don't seem to take it further beyond that point where, I mean, do you have psychosis within animals?
Yeah, I mean, there are talk of, dogs going into depression. So maybe
Yes,
there
yes. So
is.
all animals, I've read about that, but that is more behavioral, and it's kind of
I see what you're saying.
they've been
Okay.
able. It isn't.
But your mental state also dictates how you behave in a
Right, and
way. It
that's the
influences it.
psychosis. Yeah,
So I think
absolutely.
what I'm trying to get at is, see, the animals don't have social norms, so it's okay. They're accepted if they behave differently.
No,
They
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 do.
may.
They so do. I mean, animals have social norms. There's a strict hierarchy, and there's a certain manner in which each animal is to behave. If not, they're put in place. At least dogs do. I mean,
And
so
that,
Actually, those hierarchies might be more strict because they're biologically passed on. You
right.
and
you understand. I mean, actually, body language might apply very well to how animals can
yes,
communicate
Exactly.
power.
Exactly. And that's the thing which to me it's like that's where bias comes in when we communicate. And
Yeah.
if we are trying to communicate effectively or whatever our agenda is or whatever it is, all these things definitely come into the picture.
But is it made? I don't. Maybe we just. I haven't examined this much in the realm of the animal world, but it's not made such a big deal. In the
I
sense
mean,
that it's.
when you talk about animals, it's only a small step at that point to talk about basically aliens. So I mean, anyone who is not human, right? How
Yeah.
do we?
Yeah.
So I think we were talking about it in one of our earlier study group. We hinted it. Interspecial communication. So
Yeah.
that is. I mean, that is really complex. How it works to me. I mean, to me, that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. I mean, and if you're talking about interspecial, I am even talking about at the very personal level.
Hmm.
Actually, everybody is an alien to me. I mean, how do I know who the other person is?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I gather a certain amount of data over a course of certain number of years, but if I'm meeting a stranger, really in a way, how am I forming my sentences? How am I forming my thoughts to communicate with this person? And that's where this whole thing comes from for me. It's very confusing.
Yeah, because I mean, we can't really. We have to look at everyone as an alien because if you, for example, just take something that you imagine, something that you dream, something that you some story that you make up, whatever, and you look at the world that exists in
Yeah,
that world is so specific, and
yeah,
that world is so uh, it's programmed in such a detailed way that you really need to expect some prior knowledge in anyone else
Yeah.
to begin to start talking to them. I mean, at least I need to. I mean,
precisely, precisely.
I can talk to people I don't know at all uh, very generally,
Hmm.
but till I get some clue of a clue which is a kind of a hook
Yeah,
into their world.
yeah.
Till that point, I can't really be specific about who I am with them.
Right, but here's the funny thing though. We are able to still empathize with somebody else who we have no clue. I mean, I can empathize with a stone sometimes. You know what I'm saying? So there's this
Yeah.
thing which comes without language, without anything. just there.
I also think it's like we're drawing on our previous experiences, because sometimes you enter a room, you see this unknown, and you have this kind of biting feeling that you're going to hate them.
Yeah.
And you're wondering, like, how can I hate them? I have never seen them, I haven't heard a word from their mouth.
Yeah.
There's no action, but you have this urge to say, I don't like this person.
Right,
Or on
exactly.
the contrary, you enter somewhere and other people probably have warned you, but you intuitively take to this person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there I wonder what clicks inside us or in our psyche that makes this connection happen.
Exactly. And I feel that's a very important question because, especially when you have so much prejudice, when you have so much racial hatred or whatever it is, these are important questions because why do I have this prejudice towards this person? Why am I biased like this? And that's my fundamental concern, actually.
I
Yeah.
think that arises when one relies on language too much,
Uh-huh.
and instead of relying on instinct, because there's a lot more going on than what we merely understand and can speak of and communicate. So I think if you're really
Yeah,
paying
it's like
attention to our instincts,
Yeah.
you're more tuned in, as opposed to if you go after somebody's history of a third person narrative or something and base your opinion on that.
Right.
You're bound to be misled through words and your interpretation, context, intention, and all of that,
But
rather than mere instinct alone,
But
which
I'm
can
going to
probably.
flip that around. I'll flip that around saying my instinct is to be scared of a person because of their skin color. And that there's a problem there.
Mm.
And
Even,
go ahead,
I
Chetan.
guess, through various examples, we've been conditioned to respond in that manner, I guess, over and over, through.
no. I think any use of any marker of identity, either for the good or for the bad, is a
Yeah.
problem. So it's like when you are with anyone, if you are with anyone,
Mm-hmm.
we should have. I mean, I think a part of human communication is the capacity. We need to have the capacity to just deal with the presence of the person in front of us and not really value any attribute of their identity over their presence.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
And but then to go back to what Chetan was saying about language, some of our instincts could also be shaped by what language we are hearing. In the sense, if somebody says this color is skin is good or this color is bad, then those inputs which come through language they get into our instinctual state.
The
I don't
language
know
sort
to
of.
what extent.
Like you're hearing
Because
the messages, right? Like Fair and Lovely or something, for example.
yeah, but you
And
can
that
choose to either follow or believe it or not believe it.
precisely. But how many of us actually go through the exercise of even deciding to choose, like can even becoming aware of the choice that I can decide to choose.
That's actually very true. Satya. It's like before even you can kind of get it to your conscious psyche that you have chosen something, you've already reacted to this person, this being in front of you, just based on like superficial factors that
Yeah.
shouldn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, none of this examination might even be worth it because to communicate, you are communicating somehow or the other. Does it even matter to think about all these things? That's another thing which occurs to me. If I have to speak, I'll speak.
No, I think it matters. It's important or whatever to establish a set of practices or rules, whatever. It's like so. Like okay, like I deal only with presence and I don't deal with anything else. So I mean, I set rules if they become part of how our sociality is passed on, right? So
Uh-huh.
like in schools, families, whatever, that will really, I think that I think most of us are focusing too much on the noise,
Right, right.
and
And
we need to be easier to ourselves. We can't do so much processing.
Right, right, right.
But Prayas, don't you think that it's a defensive mechanism that we use this processing to defend ourselves, to save our feelings and emotions and not be so vulnerable?
Exactly, for the thick skin, you need to do it.
Hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just the direction I've been thinking in of late. It's just that, you eventually have to succumb to your fear. So you might have a narrative of defense in your head, but actually you are only limiting your access to a kind of presence, right? Because you're filtering it out. You're filtering the effect of where you are through all these defense mechanisms. So if you're doing that, then I mean, I'm just saying you can also lust after experiencing fully where wherever you are and
Hmm.
suffer the consequences. Just
Hmm. And you spoke of rules of interaction, and I feel like a useful rule might be to constantly examine the way. So examine the rules. One of the rules is to examine the rules.
yeah.
So that way that there's a consciousness of what am I doing, and therefore, like, as Kritika talked about the choice, right? We choose to or
Hmm.
something I forget, but um,
There's a question I have. When you talk of rules, are you differentiating it from instruction?
more like rules of interaction, which I have sort of constructed for myself based on various interact or whatever input.
Because I got thinking about this thing of this whole International Yoga Day and
Uh-huh.
do yoga every day. Now everybody is getting a text message every morning. I
Yeah.
mean,
Hmm.
it's well, I was just thinking it's at one level incredible that you know the outreach of this one message
Yeah,
is controlled. And there's no way you can switch it off. I mean, you can put it on silent, you can put a do not disturb thing on that, but
yeah,
using language just like your fair and lovely thing, you can choose to either ignore it or
yeah.
act upon it, but you can't stop it.
You can't stop it. That's
You
right.
can't stop it. And over a period of time, if that is driven in at a much higher frequency, like instead of getting one, you're getting 20 every hour,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
then would you not be at some point, it's like brainwashing. You will end up just giving in at some point,
yeah. Just to make it stop.
either to make it stop or just your mind stops thinking
Process.
logically.
Yes.
You just start saying this is it.
Yeah.
It is a kind of programming, and in that sense language can we can be programmed by language.
Makes sense.
But
What do
using
you
the
think
word
advertising is
brainwashing.
based on?
No, I completely agree.
No, but
Advertising is
no, but Chetan and Malvika, I think using brainwashing or giving so much power, ascribing so much power to advertising on media
hmm.
is actually. So how does brainwashing really, where does it come from and how does it operate? It operates when you have absolute control on the body that's been subjected to brainwashing, right? So like in the torture chamber, so
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have you have absolute control. That person
yeah,
doesn't have any choice to actually to even go out,
yeah,
to go out or uh, to go out or to limit to change what they are receiving as a communication.
So
right.
So
let me
in
flip
a
that.
general media environment, it's not like that. We have all the choice we want.
But let me, because we've come to the time for the next question. Let me flip what you're saying and go to the place of the person who's doing the controlling. And The question is, why do you want to speak? Why do you want to communicate? Why do you want to say something? In the case of the controller,
To
in case of the controller, they have something to gain. There's some controlling happening, and they need to.
All
Therefore,
they get is control,
yeah. But
and that's so abstract.
is that all of us? Is that the motivation that drives all of us? Why do we want to
not
speak?
to escape isolation, perhaps survival.
Yeah, to escape isolation, to control.
Or to survive. It helps to work in a group. So I guess at some point one would have to communicate and to engage in activity or whatever the case.
I think it's also for recognition, right? We
Yeah.
want to be recognized.
Yeah, we have something to say and we want to be heard.
Yeah.
And to share experiences.
Yeah, and that adds to the social noise, the constructs.
Yeah.
Do we all want to speak?
We can keep quiet.
I think speaking is at least it gives us more control on the narrative. It creates the illusion of control on the narrative
Right.
than listening, because you can feel like you really are not even trying to shape the narrative. It's not that you can if you speak, but you have that illusion, you have that
Yeah,
deluded thought running in your head.
yeah. And which might stem from, as Chetan said, survival, or as Kritika said, recognition. That
I think sometimes we feel the need to speak in order to not be misunderstood.
right.
Yes.
I really feel that there is no time for people to kind of read that slight body language nuance of what's going on, and unless I verbalize it, they're going to get me wrong.
Correct.
You feel the need to like jump in and butt in and say something, and sometimes it might not have been the most sensible thing to do, but you just feel that need that I need to set the table sort of a thing.
Right. Right. And so there is a perception that's being formed of the self that is being presented to the other.
Yeah, yeah.
And we are fighting against the perceptions that others are forming of us, and we want to set that right.
To not be misunderstood. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Or to feel in control of the reflection that other people are seeing of us.
Right.
Why do we need to do that?
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
Well, I mean,
why do we
Uh-huh.
have to ascribe so much importance to others' perceptions? We
No,
can
but
just
I mean,
axe to
This is
grind.
for survival.
We don't all have to. It's something
but is it life threatening?
do
Is it life
Could be.
threatening?
It could be, because if you're a woman in the medieval times who has long hair and who's just playing with some herbs, and other people call her a witch, you know. So I feel like there is a lot of, and this is very confusing to me because I'm spinning my own story. Somebody else is spinning their own story. Which story? Or if I don't spin my own story, somebody else is spinning the story for me. There is a danger in that, or there isn't. If I can be strong enough to say, you know what, just, whatever, fuck it, this is who I am. It doesn't matter what anyone says. But
I think we all have the days when we need external confirmation of who we are, right? So
Yes.
Yeah.
try to build this image of us that other people are also on our wavelength, and the day we need confirmation of who we are, then these people will resonate the same thing that we want to hear rather than come up with something totally parallel or different.
right.
So maybe that's where we all have this need for image building, be it on a social platform, be it in your friend circle, but this whole role of your image becomes a very integral part of how we survive, probably.
Yeah,
Right.
sanity even. Yeah, even.
Right. And then if we have incorrect information about ourselves and we make mistakes and build the wrong image, that's another problem.
It's
Yeah.
a futile exercise, actually,
Really is. Really.
to try to balance it out.
There's too many perceptions all around.
True, true. How many are you going to tow and?
So are we advertising ourselves?
Yeah, I think every day, like the fact that you go have a shower in the morning and tie up your hair is all advertising.
Right.
No, I think no. It's also got to do with how you feel. I mean, not to necessarily advertise. You may not even leave the house, but you do it nonetheless. Who are you advertising
To
that to?
yourself, to yourself.
Yeah.
Like I am a
Oh, yeah.
functional human being.
Possible.
So we go back to the mirror then.
Yes, yes. I like
Right.
that. I like that we went back to the mirror. So I guess we've come full circle, which perhaps circles are nice and symmetrical, so it might be a good place to stop, right? Um, thank you all for joining, and
Thank you.
tomorrow we will talk about basically we'll continue from why we speak and then why speak at all, because there's so much being said, and why do you even
Probably we can skip that altogether.
no, but
Speak at all.
I'm curious about, like, that's the thing. I mean, I'm at a place where I'm like, why should I even open my mouth? What's the point?
Right.
Please convince me that I need to open my mouth, that I don't. So, okay, thanks everyone for joining.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for the invite,
See
Satya.
you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
See you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.